It's September 4th, 476 AD. The city of Ravenna, nestled along Italy's Adriatic coast, is a shadow of the Rome it serves. Once a bustling port, its marshes now choke with silt, its grand palaces dwarfed by the memory of a greater empire. Inside a modest imperial residence, a 16-year-old boy, Romulus Augustulus, wears the purple robe of a Roman emperor, but his eyes betray fear. Outside, soldiers loyal to a barbarian general, Odoacer, sharpen their blades. The Western Roman Empire, which once spanned from the Atlantic to the Euphrates, is about to collapse, not with a thunderous crash, but with a quiet surrender that will echo through history. Welcome to Vestige Files, where we unearth the pivotal moments that shaped our world. This is the story of how Rome fell, a tale of glory, decay, and the tides of change that swept away an empire. To understand this collapse, we must rewind to the height of Rome's power, when its legions conquered continents and its name was synonymous with eternity. In the 2nd century AD, under emperors like Trajan and Hadrian, Rome was the undisputed master of the known world. Its empire stretched across 3 continents, from Britain's misty hills to Egypt's sun-scorched deserts, encompassing 5 million square kilometers and 70 million souls, 1/5 of humanity. Rome's roads, 400,000 kilometers of them, linked bustling cities like Antioch, Alexandria, and Carthage. Aqueducts carried fresh water to urban centers where marble temples gleamed and forums buzzed with trade and debate. The Pax Romana, a 200-year era of relative peace beginning in 27 BC under Augustus, brought prosperity and stability. Roman law unified diverse peoples, Gauls, Iberians, Numidians, under a single system, while Latin and Greek wove a common cultural thread. The legions, disciplined and fearsome, guarded frontiers along the Rhine, Danube, and Sahara, keeping barbarian tribes at bay. Yet beneath this grandeur, cracks were forming. Rome's vastness was its strength and its curse. By the 3rd century, the empire was a colossus with feet of clay. Its economy, built on conquest and slave labor, faltered as new territories dried up. Gold and silver mines dwindled, and inflation soared. By 270 AD, a loaf of bread cost 200 times what it had a century earlier. The Emperor Diocletian, ruling from 284 to 305, tried to stabilize the chaos. He split the empire into East and West, creating a tetrarchy, 4 rulers sharing power, to manage its sprawl. The East, based in Constantinople, thrived with its rich trade routes to Asia. The West, centered in Italy, struggled, its cities depopulated by plague, and its borders battered by Germanic tribes like the Goths and Vandals. Diocletian's reforms bought time, but they couldn't heal the empire's deeper wounds. Taxes skyrocketed to fund an army of 500,000 men, crushing farmers and merchants. Corruption festered as governors and generals enriched themselves. Christianity, legalized by Constantine in 313 with the Edict of Milan, spread rapidly, challenging the old pagan gods and dividing loyalties. By the 4th century, the empire was less a unified state than a patchwork of competing interests. Senators hoarding wealth, bishops wielding spiritual power, and generals plotting coups. The Roman army, once an iron fist, grew reliant on barbarian mercenaries, men from beyond the frontiers who fought for gold, not glory. Enter the 2 forces that would shape Rome's final days: the barbarians and the emperors who failed to stop them. The Germanic tribes, Goths, Vandals, Franks, were not savages but complex societies with their own kings and customs. Pushed west by the Huns, a nomadic horde from Central Asia, they pressed against Rome's borders, seeking land and safety. The Visigoths, led by Alaric, were among the most formidable. In 376, they begged asylum within the empire, fleeing Hunnic raids. Rome let them settle in Thrace, but corrupt officials starved and enslaved them, sparking rebellion. In 378, at the Battle of Adrianople, the Visigoths crushed a Roman army, killing Emperor Valens and exposing the empire's vulnerability. It was a turning point. Rome could no longer dictate terms to its foes. On the imperial throne, a string of weak rulers hastened the decline. Theodosius I, ruling from 379 to 395, was the last to govern a united empire. A devout Christian, he banned pagan worship, alienating traditionalists, and split the empire between his sons, Arcadius in the east and Honorius in the west. Honorius, only 10 when he inherited the west in 395, was a puppet of advisors like Stilicho, a half-Vandal general who held the real power. Stilicho's skill kept the west afloat, repelling Alaric's Visigoths and other threats, but his mixed heritage made him a target. In 408, Honorius, paranoid and inept, ordered Stilicho's execution, gutting Rome's defenses. The stage was set for collapse, as barbarians sensed weakness and Rome's leaders turned inward, bickering over power while the empire crumbled. By 410, the Western Roman Empire was a house of cards. Alaric, the Visigoth king, had grown tired of Rome's broken promises. For years, he demanded land and tribute, only to be rebuffed. In August 410, his patience snapped. Leading 40,000 warriors, he marched on Rome itself, the eternal city, untouched by foreign enemies for 800 years. The Visigoths breached the Aurelian walls, looting for 3 days. They spared lives but stripped temples, villas, and markets of gold, silver, and silks. The sack shocked the world. Pagans blamed Christians for abandoning the old gods. Christians, like Augustine of Hippo, wrote treatises like City of God to argue Rome's fall was divine will, not divine failure. For the first time, Romans faced the unthinkable. Their empire was mortal. The sack of 410 was a symptom, not the cause, of Rome's collapse. The real rot was internal. The Western Empire's economy was in freefall. Taxes couldn't sustain the army, and trade collapsed as pirates and bandits roamed unchecked. Cities shrank. Rome's population fell from 800,000 in 200 AD to under 100,000 by 450. Rural estates, owned by wealthy senators, became self-sufficient fortresses, hoarding resources while the state starved. The army, stretched across 4,000 miles of frontier, was a shadow of its former self. By 425, it relied on foederati, barbarian allies like the Visigoths and Burgundians, who fought for Rome but owed loyalty to their own kings. Meanwhile, the East thrived under stronger emperors like Theodosius II, whose walls around Constantinople defied invaders. The West had no such luck. Honorius, ruling from Ravenna, safer than Rome, ignored crises to tend his pet chickens, as one chronicler mocked. His generals squabbled, and his court drowned in intrigue. In 423, Honorius died childless, leaving a power vacuum. His successor, Valentinian III, was only 6, ruled by his mother, Galla Placidia, and a rotating cast of generals. The empire staggered on, but new threats loomed. The Vandals, another Germanic tribe, were a growing menace. Led by King Gaiseric, they crossed the Rhine in 406, plundering Gaul before settling in Spain. In 429, Gaiseric seized North Africa, Rome's breadbasket, capturing Carthage by 439. The loss was catastrophic. Africa supplied 60% of Rome's grain, feeding its cities and legions. Without it, starvation gripped Italy, and tax revenue plummeted. Gaiseric's fleet raided Sicily and Sardinia, choking off trade. Rome, once the world's granary, now begged for scraps. The Huns, under Attila, delivered another blow. A nomadic warrior from the steppes, Attila united the Huns into a terrifying force by 434. He extorted gold from the east, then turned west. In 451, Attila invaded Gaul, sacking cities until a coalition of Romans and Visigoths, led by General Aetius, stopped him at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains. It was Rome's last great victory, but it came at a cost. Aetius, like Stilicho, was murdered by a jealous emperor, Valentinian III, in 454. A year later, Valentinian himself was assassinated, leaving a string of puppet emperors to rule a dying empire. By the 460s, the West was a patchwork of barbarian kingdoms. The Visigoths held Spain and southern Gaul, the Vandals ruled North Africa, and the Franks and Burgundians carved out chunks of Gaul. Italy remained Roman in name, but its emperors were powerless. Majorian, ruling from 457 to 461, tried to reverse the tide, retaking parts of Gaul and Spain, but his own generals betrayed him. By 475, the Western Empire was a rump state, controlling little beyond Italy. The final emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was a boy installed by his father, Orestes, a Roman general. His name was a cruel irony, a nod to Rome's founder, Romulus, and its first emperor, Augustus. But he ruled nothing, a figurehead in a crumbling world. In 476, the end came quietly. Odoacer, a Germanic general of the Heruli tribe, served as a Roman commander in Italy. Like many barbarians, he was integrated into the empire, leading foederati troops. But Rome's treasury was empty, and Orestes refused Odoacer's demand for land to settle his men. In August 476, Odoacer rebelled, capturing Ravenna. On September 4th, he deposed Romulus Augustulus, sparing the boy's life but sending him into exile in Campania with a pension. Odoacer declared himself king of Italy, sending the imperial regalia to Constantinople's emperor, Zeno, with a message. The West no longer needed an emperor. Zeno, preoccupied with Eastern affairs, accepted the gesture, naming Odoacer a nominal governor. The Western Roman Empire, after 500 years, was gone. The fall of 476 was less a cataclysm than a formality. The empire had been dying for decades, its institutions hollowed out, its borders porous. Odoacer ruled Italy as a barbarian king, blending Roman and Germanic traditions. He minted coins in Zeno's name, maintained Roman laws, and protected the Senate, but his reign marked a new era. Across the West, barbarian kingdoms, Visigoths in Spain, Franks in Gaul, Ostrogoths in Italy, built successor states on Rome's ruins, preserving its language, law, and Christianity while forging their own identities. The Eastern Roman Empire, later called the Byzantine Empire, endured for another 1,000 years until Constantinople fell to the Ottomans in 1453. It carried Rome's torch, preserving Greek and Roman culture, while the West descended into the early Middle Ages. In the West, the fall reshaped history. Without Roman unity, Europe fragmented into feudal kingdoms. Trade collapsed, cities emptied, and literacy plummeted. By 600, only clergy could read Latin in much of the West. The Catholic Church, led by popes like Gregory the Great, filled the vacuum, becoming Europe's moral and political anchor. Monasteries preserved Roman texts, while Charlemagne, crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 800, tried to revive Rome's glory, though his empire was a pale imitation. The human cost was staggering. In Italy, population fell by half between 400 and 600, from war, famine, and plague. The Justinian plague of 541 to 542 carried along trade routes, killed up to 50 million across the former empire. Farmers abandoned fields and aqueducts crumbled, turning Rome into a village among ruins. Yet the fall sparked resilience. In Gaul, Frankish king Clovis converted to Christianity in 496, uniting tribes under a faith that became Europe's bedrock. In Britain, cut off from Rome, Anglo-Saxon kingdoms rose, blending Celtic and Germanic cultures. Roman roads and bridges endured, used by pilgrims and traders who kept the idea of Rome alive. The fall of Rome left a complex legacy. It was not a single event, but a slow bleed, driven by internal decay, economic collapse, corruption, over-reliance on mercenaries, and external pressure from barbarians and Huns. Some, like historian Edward Gibbon, blamed Christianity for softening Rome's martial spirit. Others point to economic mismanagement or climate change as cooling temperatures disrupted agriculture. The truth lies in a tangle of causes, each feeding the others. Rome's vastness demanded resources it could no longer muster, and its leaders, from Honorius to Romulus Augustulus, lacked the vision to adapt. The empire's end reshaped the world. Latin evolved into Romance languages, Italian, French, Spanish, while Roman law influenced medieval and modern legal systems. The Catholic Church, born in Rome's shadow, guided Europe through the Dark Ages, its cathedrals built on Roman foundations. The idea of Rome, a universal empire, haunted history, inspiring Charlemagne, Napoleon, and even the European Union. Yet the fall also birthed division. The West's fragmentation into kingdoms set the stage for centuries of conflict, from medieval wars to modern nationalism. Was Rome's fall inevitable, a giant too vast to stand, or could stronger leaders have saved it? Did the barbarians destroy an empire, or merely inherit its ruins? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this journey through Rome's twilight moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to Vestige Files, and ring the bell for more stories of history's turning points.